Globally, it's estimated that less than 5 of all reported cases of police misconduct involving public figures ever result in a conviction. A stark reality that often leaves victims feeling utterly abandoned by the very system designed to protect them. This chilling statistic isn't just a number. It's a profound, systemic failure that echoes through the corridors of power, whispering tales of untouchable authority and the crushing vulnerability of those who dare to stand against it. And it is within this very shadow, in the heart of what should be a sanctuary of justice, that one of the most egregious betrayals of public trust unfolded. A story so deeply disturbing it peeled back the veneer of civility to reveal the raw, predatory underbelly of power. This isn't just a crime. It's a testament to the corrosive influence of unchecked political might, a narrative that demands not just our attention, but our unwavering condemnation. Our story begins not in some dimly lit alleyway or forgotten corner of society, but in the sterile, fluorescent glow of a local police station in a bustling Indian city, a place that, by its very design, is meant to embody law and order, a bulwark against chaos. The air, usually thick with the scent of stale paper and the clatter of officialdom, was on this particular evening, infused with an almost imperceptible tension, a prelude to the storm that was about to break. It was late, past the hour when routine queries turn into urgent investigations, when a young woman, no older than 22, found herself walking through its imposing doors. Her name was Priya Sharma, a name that, in the ensuing days, would become synonymous with resilience, but on that night, it was merely a whispered plea for help. Priya wasn't a stranger to hardship. Life had dealt her more than her fair share of challenges, yet she possessed an indomitable spirit, a quiet strength that belied her slender frame. Her visit to the police station wasn't born of youthful indiscretion or a minor dispute. It was a desperate act, a last resort to reclaim a semblance of dignity after an escalating campaign of harassment. For weeks, a local politician, a man named Vijay Singh, had been relentlessly pursuing her. Singh was a figure of considerable local influence, a man whose pockets ran deep and whose connections stretched far, a fact he frequently brandished as a shield and a weapon. His initial advances had been subtly suggestive, veiled invitations that Priya, a woman of principle and self-respect, had unequivocally rejected. But Singh was not a man accustomed to hearing no. His rejections only fueled his obsession, transforming his pursuit into an insidious campaign of intimidation. Anonymous calls, lingering glances that felt like physical touches, veiled threats whispered through intermediaries. Each incident chipped away at Priya's peace of mind, transforming her daily life into a gauntlet of anxiety. She lived with her elderly grandmother, a woman whose fragile health made Priya all the more determined to protect their tranquil existence. The thought of bringing such a powerful man's wrath upon her family was terrifying, yet the alternative, succumbing to his demands, was unthinkable. This internal struggle had gnawed at her, until one particularly brazen incident forced her hand. Singh's henchmen, emboldened by their patron's impunity, had confronted Priya directly, issuing a chilling ultimatum: comply or face dire consequences. It was then, standing on the precipice of despair, that Priya made the courageous decision to seek refuge in the arms of the law. Her arrival at the police station was met with the usual bureaucratic indifference. A jaded desk sergeant, his uniform creased and his face etched with years of witnessing human misery, barely looked up as Priya haltingly explained her predicament. She recounted the harassment, the threats, the growing fear that permeated every waking moment. Her voice, though trembling, carried an unwavering conviction. The sergeant, accustomed to dealing with minor squabbles and the incessant complaints of the public, initially dismissed her concerns as the overreactions of a young woman. "These politicians," he grumbled, "they all have their admirers. Are you sure you're not just misunderstanding his intentions?" His words, though perhaps not intended to be dismissive, landed like stones, shattering Priya's fragile hope. Yet Priya persisted. She detailed specific instances, mentioned names, dates, locations. Her unwavering resolve, coupled with the increasingly specific nature of her allegations, finally pierced through the sergeant's cynical armor. He reluctantly agreed to escalate the matter, directing her to an inspector's office, a slightly more secluded area of the station. This was Inspector Chauhan, a man whose reputation was a curious blend of competence and pragmatism. Chauhan, a veteran officer, understood the delicate dance of power within the city. He knew the immense influence of men like Vijay Singh and the inherent risks of crossing them. He listened to Priya with a more attentive ear, his gaze scanning her face, searching for any hint of fabrication. But what he found was genuine fear, a raw, unvarnished terror that resonated with the many victims he had encountered over his career. As Priya concluded her harrowing account, a profound silence descended upon the small office. Chauhan leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming a quiet rhythm on his desk. He was weighing the implications, the potential political fallout, the career-ending ramifications of pursuing a case against someone of Singh's stature. Yet, beneath his pragmatic exterior, a flicker of decency stirred. This young woman was clearly in distress, and the accusations, if true, painted a picture of blatant abuse of power. He made a decision, a choice that would reverberate far beyond the confines of his office. He would investigate. Just as Chauhan was outlining the initial steps of the investigation, the doors to the police station swung open with an almost theatrical flourish, and enstrode none other than Vijay Singh himself. His entrance was not subtle. It was an assertion, a performance of power designed to intimidate. He was flanked by two burly men, ostensibly his bodyguards, whose mere presence seemed to shrink the already cramped space of the police station lobby. Singh, impeccably dressed in a pristine white kurta, surveyed the room with an arrogant smirk, his eyes quickly landing on Priya's terrified face in Chauhan's office. It was as if he possessed an uncanny sixth sense, an almost preternatural ability to appear precisely when his presence could exert maximum pressure. A wave of unease rippled through the station. Junior officers instinctively straightened their postures, their eyes darting nervously. Even the desk sergeant, usually unflappable, seemed to shrink slightly in his chair. Singh was not merely a politician. He was a force of nature in this town, a man whose displeasure could make careers vanish and lives turn irrevocably difficult. His presence inside the police station, at this particular moment, was no coincidence. It was a carefully orchestrated power play, a direct challenge to the very institution Priya had sought refuge in. Singh strode purposefully towards Chauhan's office, his steps echoing loudly in the sudden hush. "Inspector Chauhan," he boomed, his voice oozing with a deceptive cordiality that barely masked its underlying menace. "I hear you're entertaining some baseless accusations." His gaze, sharp and piercing, flickered between Chauhan and Priya, a clear warning in its depths. Priya, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, instinctively recoiled, her face paling. The very man she was seeking protection from had materialized, not outside, not at a distance, but inside the police station, within arm's reach. Chauhan, despite the palpable tension, maintained his composure. He knew this moment was inevitable. "Mr. Singh," he replied, his voice calm, measured, "Ms. Sharma has filed a complaint, and we are simply following due process." His tone was professional, devoid of emotion, yet it carried an underlying firmness. He understood the delicate balance. He couldn't openly defy Singh without potentially jeopardizing his career, but he also couldn't allow a victim to be openly intimidated within the confines of his own station. Singh chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that sent shivers down Priya's spine. "Due process?" he scoffed. "Or simply wasting police resources on the delusions of a gold digger?" The insult, hurled casually yet with venomous intent, hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Priya flinched as if struck. Chauhan's jaw tightened. He knew Singh's tactic, to discredit the victim, to paint her as manipulative, as someone seeking financial gain rather than justice. It was an old, cruel trick, but alarmingly effective, especially when wielded by someone of Singh's standing. "Mr. Singh, I must ask you to refrain from such personal remarks," Chauhan stated, his voice now edged with a warning. This is an official investigation. But Singh was beyond decorum. He had come to assert dominance, to crush any nascent resistance, and he saw Priya as a minor inconvenience, a fly to be swatted away. He stepped closer to Priya, his eyes narrowing, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that was just loud enough for everyone in the immediate vicinity to hear. "You think you can play games with me, little girl?" He sneered, his words laced with contempt. "You think these police officers, these pawns, will protect you from a man like me? I own this city. I own these streets, and soon, I will own your silence." He paused, letting his words sink in, watching the terror bloom in Priya's eyes. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement that sent a chill down the spines of the few junior officers watching, Singh raised his hand. Not to strike, but to perform an act far more insidious, far more humiliating in the confined space of a police station. He reached out, not quite touching her, but close enough for her to feel the brush of air, and with a swift, dismissive motion, he flicked his hand, as if swatting away a bothersome insect. It was a gesture designed not to inflict physical pain, but to utterly diminish, to strip away every shred of Priya's agency and self-worth in front of the very people meant to uphold her rights. It was a public act of symbolic violence, a declaration of his absolute power, enacted within the sacred space of the law. The message was clear. You are nothing, your complaints are meaningless, and I am beyond consequence. Priya stood frozen, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and outrage. The flick of his hand felt like a branding, a mark of shame etched upon her very being. The air in the office crackled with unspoken tension. Chauhan, who had been struggling to maintain his professional demeanor, felt a surge of cold fury. This was not just intimidation. This was an outright act of humiliation, performed with brazen impunity, under his very nose, within the confines of his own police station. It was a direct assault on the dignity of a victim and a profound insult to the institution he served. The implications were staggering. A politician, inside a police station, humiliating a complainant. This was not a backroom deal or a whispered threat in the shadows. This was a public display of contempt for the law, a brazen assertion that some individuals were above its reach. For Priya, it was the ultimate betrayal. The very place she had sought safety had become another stage for her tormentor. Her initial fear now morphed into a potent cocktail of anger and despair. She had come seeking justice, and instead, she had been subjected to a renewed, intensified form of degradation. Chauhan knew, in that gut-wrenching moment, that he had a choice to make. He could cower, could allow Singh's power to dictate the narrative, effectively closing the case and further traumatizing Priya. Or he could stand up. He was not a reckless man, but there were lines even a pragmatic officer could not allow to be crossed. This was one of them. The humiliation of a victim, inside his station, was a step too far. It challenged his authority, his integrity, and the very foundations of justice. "Mr. Singh," Chauhan said, his voice now devoid of its previous restraint, each word precise and heavy with unspoken warning. "You have just committed an act of intimidation and public humiliation within a police station. This is not acceptable. This is a crime in itself." He rose slowly from his chair, his gaze locking with Singh's. The politician, initially taken aback by Chauhan's sudden shift in demeanor, narrowed his eyes, a flicker of genuine surprise momentarily replacing his arrogance. He wasn't accustomed to direct challenges, especially not from a local police inspector. "Are you threatening me, Inspector?" Singh snarled, his voice losing its veneer of cordiality, revealing the raw aggression beneath. "Do you know who you're speaking to?" "I know exactly who I'm speaking to," Chauhan retorted. "A man who believes his power places him above the law. But let me assure you, Mr. Singh, no one is above the law. Not in my station, not on my watch." He then turned to his subordinate, a young constable who had been observing the scene, transfixed with a mixture of fear and awe. "Constable, call for additional officers." "Mr. Singh," "You are under arrest for intimidation and obstruction of justice." The words hung in the air, shocking in their audacity. Singh's face, usually composed in an arrogant mask, contorted in disbelief, then in a flash of incandescent rage. "You dare!" he roared, his bodyguards tensing, their hands moving instinctively. But Chauhan was ready. He had anticipated this. Two more officers, drawn by the commotion, had already entered the office, their presence providing a crucial layer of support. Priya, witnessing this sudden, dramatic turn of events, felt a surge of bewildering emotions. Fear still gnawed at her, but it was now laced with an unexpected spark of hope, a nascent belief that perhaps, just perhaps, justice wasn't an entirely lost cause. The image of Inspector Chauhan standing up to a man like Vijay Singh felt almost unreal, a scene lifted from a movie rather than the grim reality she had come to expect. The ensuing minutes were a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Singh, initially resistant, railing against Chauhan, threatening him with dire consequences, eventually realized that the inspector was not backing down. The presence of additional uniformed officers, their faces stern and unyielding, slowly chipped away at his bravado. He was a politician, yes, but he was also a man accustomed to having his orders followed, not challenged. Being arrested, publicly, in a police station, was not just an inconvenience. It was a devastating blow to his carefully cultivated image of untouchability. It was a humiliation far greater than anything he had inflicted on Priya, precisely because it was legal, official, and therefore undeniable. As Singh was led away, his face a mask of furious indignation, a profound silence once again settled over the police station. But this time it was different. It was not the silence of fear or indifference, but the quiet aftermath of a stand taken, a line drawn. Priya watched him go, a shiver running through her, a complex mix of relief, exhaustion, and a lingering sense of disbelief. She had dared to speak truth to power, and for the first time power had blinked. Inspector Chauhan turned back to Priya, his earlier stern demeanor softening into one of quiet resolve. "Ms. Sharma," he said, "I assure you, we will pursue this case with the utmost diligence. Your complaint is now on record, and Mr. Singh's actions here tonight have only strengthened our resolve." He saw the lingering trauma in her eyes, the deep-seated fear that wouldn't simply vanish with Singh's arrest. He knew that the battle was far from over. Singh's arrest was a crucial first step, but the wheels of justice grind slowly, and powerful men have many ways of influencing their trajectory. The incident inside the police station, the public humiliation of Priya, and the subsequent arrest of Vijay Singh quickly became a local sensation. News of the audacious inspector and the brave young woman who dared to stand up to a powerful politician spread like wildfire through the city's rumor mills and soon, through its media outlets. Initial reports were cautious, hinting at allegations of misconduct, but as the story gained traction, propelled by the sheer audacity of Singh's actions within the station, the narrative shifted. It became a story of abuse of power, of a system challenged, and of a glimmer of hope for the common person. However, the political machinery, deeply entrenched and incredibly resilient, was quick to react. Singh's party, initially scrambling to control the damage, swiftly launched a counteroffensive. They painted Singh as a victim of a conspiracy, a target of political rivals, and Priya as a disgruntled individual with ulterior motives. The media, often beholden to political pressures or swayed by the allure of sensationalism, began to publish conflicting narratives. Some outlets lionized Chauhan and Priya, hailing them as heroes, while others, subtly or overtly, cast doubt on their claims, citing Singh's exemplary public service and the unblemished record of his party. Priya found herself thrust into an unwanted spotlight, her life, once private and unassuming, now a subject of intense public scrutiny. Reporters swarmed her small home, their questions probing, their cameras intrusive. She had to relive her ordeal repeatedly, not just for the police and lawyers, but for the hungry maw of public opinion. The emotional toll was immense. Her grandmother, frail and confused, struggled to understand the sudden chaos that enveloped their lives. Priya, despite the support from Chauhan and a growing number of civil society activists, felt the immense weight of the system pressing down on her. Inspector Chauhan, too, faced the full brunt of political retaliation. He received veiled threats, anonymous calls questioning his integrity, and subtle pressures from within the police hierarchy to reconsider the charges against Singh. His superiors, caught between the demands of justice and the imperatives of political appeasement, found themselves in a precarious position. Transfers were hinted at, promotions mysteriously stalled, and his usually straightforward career path suddenly became fraught with obstacles. Yet, Chauhan, a man of quiet conviction, refused to buckle. He understood the risks, but the image of Priya's terrified face and Singh's arrogant, contemptuous smirk remained seared into his memory. He knew that if he retreated now, it would send a message that power always triumphs, and that message was one he was unwilling to send. The legal battle that ensued was protracted and arduous. Singh, leveraging his vast resources, assembled a formidable legal team, their sole objective to discredit Priya, undermine Chauhan's investigation, and ultimately, ensure their client walked free. They attacked Priya's character, questioning her background, her motivations, even her moral standing, in an attempt to portray her as unreliable, a schemer, anything but a genuine victim. The defense argued that Singh's actions in the police station were merely a misunderstanding, a misguided attempt to clarify the situation, and that the flick of his hand was misinterpreted, perhaps even imagined, by an overly sensitive complainant. The public debate raged, dividing the city. Some championed Priya, seeing her as a symbol of resistance against corruption and abuse. Others, wary of challenging powerful figures or simply believing the politician's narrative, dismissed her claims, viewing her as an opportunist seeking to capitalize on a prominent figure's reputation. The case transcended a simple criminal complaint. It became a microcosm of the larger societal struggle between the powerful and the powerless, between justice and political expediency. Key to the prosecution's case was the testimony of Inspector Chauhan and the few junior officers who had witnessed Singh's brazen act inside the police station. Their accounts, though consistent, were subjected to intense scrutiny and relentless cross-examination by Singh's lawyers. They questioned the officers' objectivity, their motives, even their memory, attempting to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of the judge and, more importantly, the public. The lack of clear video evidence, many police stations in that era lacked comprehensive CCTV coverage of every interaction, made the case heavily reliant on witness testimonies, which, while powerful, could also be swayed or dismissed. Priya, against all odds, maintained her composure through the grueling court proceedings. Each appearance was an ordeal, each question a fresh wound, but she faced it all with a quiet dignity that slowly began to win over even some of the skeptics. She spoke not with anger, but with a profound sense of injustice. She spoke not with anger, but with a profound sense of injustice, her voice, though still soft, carrying the weight of 1,000 suppressed voices, echoing the silent suffering of countless victims who had been silenced by power. It was this quiet resilience, this unwavering commitment to truth, that began to turn the tide, slowly but inexorably, in the court of public opinion and, more crucially, within the hallowed halls of justice. The courtroom itself became a theater of morality, a stark stage where the forces of brazen corruption clashed with the quiet tenacity of the vulnerable. Each day brought a new battle, a fresh assault on Priya's character, a new attempt to dismantle Chauhan's credibility. Singh's defense team, led by the notoriously cunning barrister Mr. Khanna, was a masterclass in obfuscation and character assassination. Khanna, with his silver tongue and ruthless logic, painted Priya as an opportunist, a schemer who had fabricated a story for financial gain or perhaps even to elevate her social standing. He dissected her life, twisting innocent details into damning evidence, scrutinizing her past relationships, her family's financial struggles, anything that could remotely cast a shadow on her integrity. "Tell me, Miss Sharma," Khanna had purred one afternoon, his voice dripping with feigned concern, Isn't it true that your grandmother's medical bills have been a significant burden? And isn't it also true that a successful lawsuit against a prominent politician could alleviate many of those burdens? He paused, allowing the implication to hang heavy in the air, a poisonous seed planted in the minds of the onlookers. Priya, her eyes unwavering, met his gaze. My grandmother's health is my greatest concern, Mr. Khanna, she replied, her voice steady. But I would never sacrifice my dignity or the truth for money. I came here for justice, not charity. Her simple, unadorned honesty, stark against Khanna's theatricality, often landed with more impact than any sophisticated legal argument. Inspector Chauhan's testimony was similarly brutalized. Khanna attacked his motives, suggesting that Chauhan, a mid-level officer, was either seeking a sensational case to boost his own career or was perhaps influenced by unseen political rivals of Singh. He insinuated that the inspector had overreacted to a minor incident, escalating it into a major confrontation to score points. Inspector, Khanna probed during cross-examination, you admit there was no physical contact when Mr. Singh allegedly flicked his hand. You admit there was no physical injury. So, Inspector, are we to understand that you arrested a distinguished public servant, a man dedicated to this city, for merely waving his hand in an argument? Is this the standard of justice you uphold? Chauhan, however, was prepared. He recounted the event with meticulous detail, focusing not just on the physical act, but on its profound psychological impact and the context within the police station. Mr. Khanna, Chauhan responded calmly. The act was not just a wave, it was a deliberate, humiliating gesture, designed to demean and intimidate a victim within the very walls of the institution meant to protect her. It was a calculated display of power that undermined the credibility of the police and traumatized a vulnerable individual. The law recognizes forms of assault beyond physical contact, especially when perpetrated by those in positions of power. His conviction, his refusal to be rattled, added significant weight to his testimony. The testimony of the junior officers, initially hesitant, gained strength under Chauhan's quiet leadership. They corroborated his account, describing the shock and unease that rippled through the station, the unspoken complicity that usually defined interactions with men like Singh, and the unprecedented nature of Chauhan's defiance. Their collective statements painted a consistent picture, slowly but surely dismantling the defense's narrative of a manufactured incident. But the battle extended far beyond the courtroom. The city was awash with whispers and rumors, a relentless psychological warfare waged by Singh's vast network. Priya received anonymous threats. Her grandmother's small shop faced unexpected inspections and bureaucratic hurdles, and even those who offered quiet support found themselves facing subtle forms of retaliation. The message was clear. Daring to challenge Vijay Singh came with a heavy price. This constant pressure was designed to exhaust Priya, to break her spirit, to make her wish she had never dared to speak up. Yet, amidst this suffocating pressure, a different kind of force began to gather momentum. A small but dedicated group of human rights activists, lawyers, and journalists, galvanized by Priya's bravery and Chauhan's integrity, rallied around them. They formed a support network, offering legal aid, emotional solace, and a platform for Priya's story to be heard beyond the filtered narratives of the mainstream media. Local grassroots organizations started holding small, peaceful protests outside the courthouse, demanding justice for Priya, transforming her individual plight into a symbol of a larger struggle against systemic corruption and abuse of power. One such activist, a fiery young lawyer named Kavya Singh, became Priya's fiercest advocate outside the courtroom. Kavya, having experienced firsthand the frustrations of a legal system often bending to the will of the powerful, saw in Priya's case a chance to make a real difference. She organized press conferences, wrote impassioned articles, and tirelessly mobilized public opinion, ensuring that Priya's story never faded from the headlines, even when Singh's cronies attempted to bury it. This isn't just about one woman and one politician, Kavya declared at a packed press conference, her voice resonating with conviction. This is about whether justice in our country is reserved only for the privileged, or if it truly belongs to every citizen, regardless of their status. Priya Sharma is not just a victim. She is a beacon of hope, showing us that even against the most formidable adversaries, truth can prevail if we dare to stand together. Her words struck a chord. The narrative began to crystallize. Priya as the embodiment of the common citizen's struggle against entrenched power, and Singh as the poster child for unchecked political might. The local election, which was nearing, further complicated matters, making the case a political hot potato. Singh's party knew that a conviction, especially for such a brazen act, could severely damage their prospects. They intensified their efforts, deploying every tactic in their arsenal, from smearing campaigns to attempting to bribe witnesses to ensure the case collapsed. The judge, Justice Raghav, was an experienced, stoic man known for his unwavering commitment to the letter of the law. He presided over the proceedings with a quiet authority, often intervening to rein in Khanna's more egregious theatrics or to ensure Priya's testimony was heard without undue interruption. He understood the immense pressure on all parties, but his focus remained steadfastly on the evidence presented before him. The lack of CCTV footage, while a hindrance, forced the court to weigh the credibility of witnesses, their consistency, and the inherent plausibility of their accounts with even greater scrutiny. After weeks of relentless legal sparring, emotionally draining testimonies, and countless hours of deliberation, the case finally neared its conclusion. The prosecution, led by a diligent but somewhat understated public prosecutor, Mr. Deshmukh, presented its closing arguments with a clear focus on the pattern of harassment, the intimidation within the police station, and the consistent testimonies of Priya and Inspector Chauhan. Deshmukh emphasized that Singh's actions were not an isolated incident, but the culmination of a systematic abuse of power designed to terrorize and silence. Khanna, in his closing, delivered a masterful performance, weaving a narrative of political conspiracy, misinterpretation, and the tragic downfall of a good man caught in a web of deceit. He passionately argued that Priya was a manipulative opportunist, Chauhan an ambitious officer overreaching his authority, and the entire case a politically motivated smear campaign against a respected public servant. He appealed to the judge's sense of civic responsibility, warning against the dangerous precedent of allowing such unsubstantiated claims to tarnish the reputation of those who serve the public. Then came the agonizing wait. Days turned into nights, laden with anticipation and dread. Priya found herself unable to sleep, every nerve ending frayed, every memory of Singh's scornful face replaying in her mind. Chauhan, despite his outward calm, felt the profound weight of his decision. He knew his career hung in the balance, but more importantly, he felt a deep responsibility to Priya, to the cause of justice, and to the integrity of the police force. When the day of the verdict finally arrived, the courtroom was packed to capacity, overflowing with journalists, activists, Singh supporters, and a nervous public. The air was thick with tension, palpable enough to choke. Priya sat next to Kavya, her hand clasped tightly in the lawyer's, a silent exchange of strength. Chauhan stood among his colleagues, his gaze fixed on Justice Raghav. Justice Raghav entered, his face inscrutable, betraying no hint of his decision. He took his seat, the rustle of robes the only sound in the cavernous room. He began to read, his voice clear and measured, dissecting the evidence, weighing the testimonies, addressing each argument put forth by both the prosecution and the defense. He spoke of the importance of credible witnesses, the context of actions, and the duty of the court to protect the vulnerable from the powerful. He acknowledged the lack of video evidence for the incident inside the police station but emphasized the consistency and corroboration of the witnesses. He dismissed the defense's attempts to discredit Priya's character as irrelevant to the specific charges of intimidation and obstruction of justice. He lauded Inspector Chauhan's courage and adherence to duty, noting that the events within the police station were a direct challenge to the rule of law. Then, the words came, slowly, deliberately, each one a hammer blow against the edifice of Singh's power. The court finds the testimony of Ms. Priya Sharma and Inspector Chauhan to be credible and consistent. The actions of Mr. Vijay Singh, both leading up to and inside the police station, constituted a clear pattern of harassment, intimidation, and an egregious attempt to obstruct justice. Such behavior, especially from a public figure, cannot and will not be tolerated. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Singh, who had maintained a confident smirk throughout the proceedings, visibly stiffened, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. Justice Raghav's voice rang out, firm and unequivocal. Therefore, this court finds Mr. Vijay Singh guilty on all charges of harassment, intimidation, and obstruction of justice. The gavel struck, a sharp, decisive crack that echoed through the stunned silence. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Then, a wave of noise erupted. Priya, tears streaming down her face, slumped into Kavya's embrace, an overwhelming wave of relief washing over her. Chauhan let out a long, silent breath he hadn't realized he was holding, a profound sense of vindication settling over him. Singh's lawyers immediately moved to appeal, but the immediate impact of the verdict was undeniable. Vijay Singh, the untouchable politician, had been found guilty. The news spread like wildfire, exploding across national headlines. Politician found guilty of intimidation in landmark case, blared one newspaper. Justice prevails for brave victim, proclaimed another. The verdict was hailed as a victory for the common person, a testament to the power of courage against corruption. It sent shockwaves through the political landscape, a chilling warning to those who believed themselves above the law. The sentencing hearing followed a few weeks later. Despite Singh's legal team's impassioned pleas for leniency, citing his public service and philanthropic contributions, Justice Raghav delivered a sentence that reflected the gravity of the crime. Vijay Singh was sentenced to a term of imprisonment, along with a substantial fine and a temporary ban from holding public office. It wasn't just a punishment. It was a strong message. The conviction of Vijay Singh, however, was not the end of Priya's journey, nor was it the end of the wider struggle. The aftermath was complex, layered with repercussions that reverberated through various facets of society. Singh's appeal process began almost immediately, promising another protracted legal battle, though his conviction in the lower court had stripped him of much of his immediate political leverage. His party, reeling from the scandal, scrambled to distance themselves, some condemning his actions while others quietly worked behind the scenes to mitigate the long-term damage. For Priya, life was irrevocably altered. She was no longer just Priya Sharma, the young woman from a modest background. She was the Priya Sharma, the one who brought down a powerful politician. While many celebrated her as a hero, her newfound visibility also brought its own set of challenges. The constant public attention, though often positive, was exhausting. She became a symbol, an emblem, and while she embraced the idea of inspiring others, the weight of such a mantle was heavy. She joined forces with Kavya and other activists, lending her voice and experience to the ongoing fight for victims' rights and against political impunity. Her quiet strength transformed into a powerful advocacy, her personal ordeal fueling a fierce determination to ensure no one else suffered in silence. Inspector Chauhan, despite his triumph, found his professional path becoming unexpectedly complicated. While many colleagues privately admired his courage, the political establishment had a long memory. His promotion was delayed indefinitely, and he was subtly sidelined, assigned to less high-profile cases. Yet, he bore it with characteristic stoicism. He had upheld his oath, protected a victim, and asserted the rule of law where it was most needed. That, for him, was its own reward. He knew that true justice often came at a personal cost, and he was prepared to pay it. The case also sparked a wider debate about police reform and accountability in India. The public outrage generated by Singh's brazen actions within the police station led to renewed calls for comprehensive CCTV installation in all police stations, better training for officers on handling cases involving influential figures, and more robust protection mechanisms for complainants. Civil society groups leveraged the momentum of Priya's victory to push for legislative changes, hoping to create a more equitable and responsive justice system. Forensically, while the case was not a traditional forensic mystery involving DNA or ballistics, It underscored the critical importance of meticulous documentation and consistent testimony in cases where physical evidence is scarce. Chauhan's detailed notes, the timely recording of Priya's statement, and the corroborating accounts of the junior officers became the forensic backbone of the prosecution. It was a testament to the idea that in the absence of tangible scientific traces, human testimony, when robust and unyielding, could itself be a powerful form of evidence. The incident inside the station, specifically, showcased the power of behavioral forensics, analyzing the psychological impact and intent behind actions, even seemingly minor ones, to establish a pattern of abuse and intimidation. Singh's flick of the hand, far from being dismissed as trivial, was forensically dissected as a deliberate act of psychological violence, an assertion of dominance in a space meant to be a sanctuary. Months turned into a year. The initial fervor surrounding the verdict began to subside, replaced by the slow, grinding work of implementing reforms and challenging entrenched systems. Priya, with Kavya's help, established a small foundation dedicated to supporting victims of political harassment, a tangible legacy of her own suffering. She still carried the scars of her ordeal, but they were no longer wounds that festered in silence. They were reminders of her strength, her voice, and her unwavering belief in a just world. The long-term impact of the Vijay Singh case rippled through the political and legal landscape of the country. It served as a stark reminder that while power could be immense, it was not absolute. It demonstrated that even against the most formidable adversaries, the unwavering courage of an individual, coupled with the integrity of a few dedicated public servants, could ignite a spark of change. It chipped away at the cynical belief that public figures were perpetually untouchable, planting a seed of hope that the scales of justice, though often slow and heavy, could indeed be tipped in favor of truth. The appeal process for Vijay Singh was as turbulent as the initial trial. His legal team, now focused on technicalities and procedural errors, fought relentlessly to overturn the conviction. They argued that the judge had erred in his interpretation of intimidation, and that Singh's political status had prejudiced the court. The media, though less sensationalized, continued to follow the developments, recognizing the societal significance of the ongoing legal battle. During this period, Singh, stripped of his public office, became a symbol of a different kind, a cautionary tale for aspiring politicians, a testament to the risks of unchecked arrogance. His political career was irrevocably shattered, his image tarnished beyond repair. Even within his own party, his influence waned, as leaders sought to distance themselves from the scandal and rebrand their image. Priya, too, found herself evolving. The quiet young woman who had hesitantly walked into the police station was now a confident advocate, her experiences forging a new purpose. She addressed conferences, spoke to university students, and meticulously documented instances of similar abuses of power, providing vital support to others who had been silenced. Her grandmother, though still frail, found a quiet strength in witnessing Priya's transformation, her initial fear giving way to immense pride. Inspector Chauhan, despite the stagnation in his career, found a deeper sense of fulfillment in his work. The quiet respect he earned from his junior officers, and the occasional grateful visit from a citizen he had helped, meant more to him than any promotion. He continued his diligent work, albeit with a renewed sense of caution and a heightened awareness of the political currents that often flowed beneath the surface of seemingly simple cases. His commitment to justice remained unshaken, tempered only by a more profound understanding of the intricacies of power. The higher court, after months of reviewing the voluminous records, listening to new arguments, and delving into the nuances of legal precedent, finally delivered its verdict on Singh's appeal. The anticipation was not as frenzied as the initial trial, but its implications were equally profound. If the conviction was overturned, it would send a chilling message that the powerful could, after all, escape accountability. If it was upheld, it would cement the legacy of Priya's courage and Chauhan's integrity. Justice Raghav's initial ruling was scrutinized down to the minutest detail. The appellate judges considered the arguments about subjective interpretation of intimidation, the alleged lack of intent for physical harm, and the broader context of political rivalry. They weighed the consistency of witness testimonies against the absence of direct video evidence. It was a battle over legal precedent, judicial interpretation, and the very definition of justice in a hierarchical society. Ultimately, the higher court upheld the conviction. Their ruling firmly stated that while physical injury was not sustained, the deliberate act of humiliation and the menacing presence in an official setting clearly constituted intimidation and obstruction. They agreed that Singh's position of power amplified the severity of his actions, making the message of impunity all the more dangerous. The decision reaffirmed the principle that the law applied equally to all, irrespective of social standing or political influence. It was a resounding victory, a definitive closing chapter on the legal battle, even if the personal and societal repercussions continued to unfold. The finality of the appeal verdict brought a new kind of peace to Priya. The legal struggle was over. She could now fully dedicate herself to her foundation, knowing that her own experience had created a pathway for others. The media attention eventually tapered off, allowing her to transition from a symbol to a substantive advocate, working quietly and effectively behind the scenes. She understood that while the headlines faded, the work of systemic change was a continuous, often unseen, effort. The legacy of the Vijay Singh case wasn't just in the conviction of one powerful man. It was in the subtle shifts it engendered. It empowered other victims to come forward, knowing that precedent had been set. It emboldened more officers like Chauhan to stand firm against pressure. It spurred deeper discussions within legal and political circles about accountability and ethical conduct. It didn't dismantle the entire system of power abuse overnight, but it carved out a significant crack in its seemingly impenetrable facade. It was a testament to the enduring power of truth, the quiet strength of conviction, and the profound, often arduous journey towards justice. Years passed. Priya's foundation, though starting small, grew into a formidable organization, providing legal aid, psychological support, and advocacy for countless individuals who had suffered at the hands of the powerful. She became a respected figure, a beacon of integrity and resilience, her name echoing in the corridors of power, not as a whisper of vulnerability, but as a resounding declaration of justice. Her once quiet life was now a vibrant tapestry woven with the threads of advocacy, each strand representing a life she had touched, a wrong she had helped right. She had transformed her personal trauma into a universal platform, a testament to the profound alchemy of turning suffering into purpose. The foundation she co-founded with Kavya, aptly named Nyaya Nayi Disha, Justice New Direction, became a sanctuary for the silenced. It was more than just a legal aid clinic. It was a community of survivors, a hub for empowerment, where the fear that once crippled individuals was systematically dismantled and replaced with collective courage. Priya, now in her late 30s, still carried the elegance of her youth, but it was now underscored by a seasoned wisdom, a quiet authority born of experience and relentless struggle. She traveled extensively, sharing her story, speaking on panels, and consulting with governments and NGOs on policy reforms aimed at protecting whistleblowers and victims of political harassment. Her unique blend of personal experience and strategic insight made her an unparalleled voice in the movement for accountability. One of the most significant changes ushered in by the Singh case, and passionately advocated for by Priya's foundation, was the enactment of the Protection Against Harassment and Intimidation Act, PAHIA. This new legislation specifically criminalized psychological intimidation and public humiliation by individuals in positions of power, providing stronger legal recourse for victims who might not suffer immediate physical harm but endured immense emotional and psychological distress. It also mandated stricter guidelines for police procedure in cases involving public figures, including the compulsory installation of high-definition CCTV cameras in all police stations, an ironic and potent legacy of Singh's undoing. Inspector Chauhan, now nearing retirement, remained at his post, his career having plateaued in the immediate aftermath of the Singh trial. Yet, paradoxically, his influence within the force grew in a different, more profound way. He became a quiet mentor, a moral compass for a new generation of officers. Young recruits, inspired by his unwavering integrity, sought his counsel, learning not just the letter of the law, but its spirit. His office, still modest and unassuming, became a de facto academy for ethical policing, a place where the unwritten rules of justice were taught alongside official regulations. He never received the promotions he might have otherwise deserved, but he earned something far more valuable: the enduring respect of his peers and the quiet gratitude of the citizens he served. His pragmatic understanding of power dynamics was now paired with an unshakable belief that the system could be nudged towards greater fairness, one principled stand at a time. He would occasionally visit Priya at her foundation, their meetings brief but meaningful, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forged in the crucible of their shared struggle. They would speak of the slow, often frustrating pace of change, but always with a renewed sense of purpose. Chauhan would share anecdotes of how the new protocols were being implemented, how junior officers, equipped with Pahia and better camera systems, were standing up to local bullies. Priya, in turn, would update him on the growing number of victims coming forward, empowered by the knowledge that they now had a fighting chance. Vijay Singh, stripped of his power and prestige, faded into obscurity. His appeals were exhausted, and he served his full sentence, a stark reminder that even the most formidable walls of privilege could crumble under the sustained assault of truth. Upon his release, he attempted a quiet return to public life, but the indelible stain of his conviction ensured he remained a pariah, a ghost of his former self, a living testament to the consequences of his hubris. The electorate, once swayed by his charisma, had learned a bitter lesson and was no longer willing to forgive. The broader impact of the case extended beyond legal reforms and individual fates. It fostered a cultural shift, a subtle but significant empowerment of the ordinary citizen. News channels, once hesitant, became bolder in reporting on political misconduct. Social media, still nascent at the time of the initial trial, blossomed into a powerful tool for civic engagement, holding public figures accountable in real time. The term Priya Sharma moment even entered the local lexicon, referring to an instance where an ordinary individual bravely challenged an entrenched authority figure, a small nod to her enduring legacy. Forensically, the case continued to be studied in law schools and police academies as a prime example of soft evidence triumphing over hard power. It demonstrated that forensic analysis extended beyond the tangible to the intangible, the careful reconstruction of psychological environments, the meticulous examination of behavioral patterns, and the critical evaluation of subjective experiences, all woven together to build an unassailable narrative of truth. The flick of Singh's hand, initially dismissed by his defense, became a powerful symbol of psychological violence, its impact dissected and understood through the lens of behavioral science and victim testimony. It taught future investigators that the absence of blood or fingerprints did not equate to the absence of a crime, especially when the crime was one of profound human degradation. Priya's grandmother lived to see her granddaughter become a nationally recognized figure, her initial fear for Priya replaced by an overwhelming sense of pride. In her final years, she would often sit by the window, watching Priya leave for work, a contented smile gracing her lips, knowing that her granddaughter had not only protected their small family, but had become a protector for countless others. The story of Priya Sharma, Inspector Chauhan, and the fall of Vijay Singh became more than just a true crime narrative. It evolved into a modern fable, whispered in villages and debated in city centers, a potent reminder that justice, though often elusive, is never entirely out of reach. It affirmed that courage, when combined with unwavering integrity, could indeed chip away at the seemingly impenetrable fortress of power, leaving behind not just ruins, but fertile ground for a more just and equitable world. Her name, once a symbol of whispered plea, now stood as a clarion call, a testament to the enduring power of truth in a world too often shadowed by deceit. The quiet young woman had, in her journey, not only found her voice, but had helped an entire nation find a stronger echo of its own. The impact of her unwavering resolve would ripple through generations, a constant reminder that even the smallest spark of defiance could ignite the largest flames of change, illuminating the path towards a future where the powerful were truly accountable, and every citizen's dignity was fiercely protected.